There are basically two ways to approach the gigantic Baalbek monolith. Either they testify that the inhabitants of ancient times were even able to create stone colossi with their simple means, or that our ancestors may have had advanced technologies after all, of which there is no trace today. Because let's be honest, how on earth did the Romans plan to move objects weighing well over 1,000 tons? In fact, this question puts conservative historians in a tight spot, and where the current theories of wooden rollers and ropes have been debunked, it is time for the alternative camp to step up. They emphasize that a quick glance at the megastructures of Baalbek would be enough to see that the historical reality had nothing to do with what is written in our history books. Three ancient record holders meet. What may sound like the beginning of a joke at first is actually a remarkable fact, because the gigantic stone blocks enthroned in the quarry at Baalbek in present-day Lebanon are among the largest known monoliths in the world. No less remarkable is the fact that the third monolith was only discovered in 2014, and who knows what other stone giants the excavations will bring to light in the future. Well, so far no one. But looking back, the history of research into the Stone of the Pregnant Woman is all the more older. After all, it was already mentioned in the early 16th century by the knight Martin Baumgartner. Accordingly, we have known for quite some time that the oversized limestone block is a good 20 meters long, over 5 meters wide in places, and more than 4 meters high. Taking into account its density, the experts ultimately concluded that the monolith weighs a good 1,000 tons, which is still a few hundred kilos less than its even more massive counterparts. Accordingly, the weight of the monoliths that were brought to light in the 90s and 2014, and which, in contrast to the Pregnant Woman's Stone, did not receive an official name, is even estimated at 1,240 and 1,650 tons, respectively. But what was the point of them anyway? Who went to the trouble of hewing these almost laughably large structures out of the ground, and what purpose did they serve? As mentioned at the beginning, the Romans are considered to be the creators of the mega monoliths. No wonder, since the corresponding quarry is only 900 meters away from the temple complexes of Baalbek, which were built between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD and are considered a prime example of Roman monumental architecture. In light of this, most historians assume that the three monoliths were also to be brought to the sacred temple district to form the foundation of another colossal building. But while a distance of 900 meters doesn't really sound like an insurmountable distance at first, this changes abruptly when you have over 1,000 tons in your luggage. So how did the Romans plan to move their gigantic loads from A to B? Well, we simply don't know. Since we have no historical records in this regard, the experts have no choice but to delve into the realm of speculation and theories. However, this would require a sound theory. But so far, there simply isn't one. In fact, the relevant specialist texts merely state that the reasons for the planned stone transport are unclear. However, it seems that the often invoked idea of wooden rollers or sleds reaches its limit in this case. After all, they would have immediately sunk into the sandy ground or broken under the immense weight of the monoliths. In the same breath, however, the experts emphasize that it was possible in the past to move enormous objects over long distances despite this. And, it should be noted, without the use of lost advanced technologies. In particular, the researchers refer to the obelisk in St. Peter's Square, which was moved to its new location in 1586 with the help of 900 workers, 150 horses, and 47 winches. And yet, it is worth noting that the rose granite monolith weighs only 320 tons, over 1,300 tons less than the heaviest of the Baalbek monoliths. Well, but maybe that's exactly why the three extra large chunks never made it out of the quarry. Because in the end, the Romans may have had to admit to themselves that they had overestimated themselves with their architectural megalomania and left unfinished. This is a perfectly understandable explanation, but it has a small but crucial catch. If we now take our eyes off the quarry and turn them to the actual temple complex, we see that the Romans did manage to transport monoliths of this size and fit them into their monumental buildings. The enigmatic blocks of the Temple of Jupiter. Great God, great temple. After all, there was no other deity in the Roman religion that stood above Jupiter. It is therefore not particularly surprising that this special divine position is also reflected in the Jupiter sanctuary at Baalbek. And in the end, there stood a temple here that was almost 290 meters long, 20 meters high, and had 54 columns, which probably made every observer freeze in awe. And although the Temple of Jupiter was one of the largest complexes in the entire Roman Empire, this was probably not only due to the astonishing dimensions of the complex, but also to its gigantic podium, which still fuels the wildest speculation to this day. This consists of the so-called trilithon, and thus of 3 blocks that are considered to be the largest stones ever used in the world. Just imagine, experts estimate that each of these colossal blocks weighs around 800 tons. But that's not all. The trilithon is by no means the bottom layer of the podium. Instead, it sits on a layer of additional stone blocks, each of which weighs 350 tons. In other words, the Romans in the 1st century AD must somehow have managed to shape the 800-ton blocks in the quarry several hundred meters away, then bring them to the temple district, and then maneuver them into place to set them on the underlying layer. And if we look even more closely, we see that the stones of the trilithon were by no means placed next to each other any old how, but fit together so perfectly that not even a sheet of paper would fit between them. But how is that even possible? In the photos of the platform and the quarry monoliths, the adults standing in front of them look like puny dwarves. So could it be that the Romans had some kind of lost advanced technology that enabled them to complete these architectural wonders? Well, surprisingly, even the alternative minds answer this question with a definite no. Not because they point to a combination of pulleys, ropes, and sheer muscle power, instead, but to the theory that it was not the Romans at all who created and moved the mega monoliths. The work of a lost civilization? According to one ancient legend, a certain Romulus began the construction of the Temple of Jupiter to thank the gods for a great victory on the battlefield. However, according to another legend, the legendary co-founder of Rome had nothing to do with the creation of the original complex, for the simple reason that it had long since come into existence by the time the Romans arrived in Baalbek. In other words, the Romans simply used the pre-existing podium to build their own shrines on top of it. A, well, admittedly bold guess, but what arguments do the alternative historians have to offer? Well, for one thing, there is simply no contemporary source that reports when and how exactly the Temple of Jupiter was built, or who commissioned its construction. The fact that we are dealing with the work of the Romans is therefore nothing more than an established assumption and not a proven fact. Furthermore, the complex features a wide range of construction methods. While countless smaller blocks were used in some places, much larger stones catch the eye in others. A uniform pattern would look different, and in this respect, some components with their unusual appearance would even seem to suggest that they originally belonged to a completely different structure. And then there is also the location problem. Baalbek is located over 2,200 kilometers from Rome. So why would the Romans have decided to build their largest stone wonders so far from the heart of their empire? In fact, the heaviest monolith we find there is the Trajan's Column, which was erected in honor of the Roman Emperor Trajan and weighs just 53 tons. In other words, the trilithic blocks are 15 times heavier than the imperial honorary monument. And if we take a closer look at other magnificent Roman buildings, such as the Colosseum, we quickly realize that the Romans used a combination of countless small blocks for these structures, and not full-grown giants, each weighing as much as 7 to 8 blue whales. Moreover, even in the conservative world of research, there is no question that the Romans were by no means the first to leave their mark in Baalbek. Archaeological investigations have shown that the human settlement history of the region goes back at least 11,000 years and did not begin in the 1st century AD. For a hypothetical precursor civilization, this would have been more than enough time to literally lay the foundation for the later Roman buildings. It is undisputed that the colossi of Baalbek are still accompanied by some question marks, And yet, we should not forget that the same would apply to the case of an unknown creator culture. Because here too, we would neither know how the people of the distant past managed to create the giant monoliths, nor how they subsequently transported and placed them. So what remains to be said in conclusion? Well, one thing is certain, the discussions about the true background of the ancient monumental buildings will not stop anytime soon. But it is also clear that the giant structures remind us once again how much there is yet to learn about the lives of our ancestors in the future, and that they open up a fascinating, vivid window on days long gone. And speaking of windows, are there any fans of hidden worlds out here? If you shouted yes out loud, you are very welcome to click on the thumb and the subscribe button so you never miss a new video from us again. See you soon!